2015 to 22, I assisted Trump in pitting complete strangers against each other. I have culpability for assisting him in MAGA and the Republican Party in tearing asunder communities and friendships and families and places of worship. As a result of my MAGA activism, I helped amplify conspiracy theories that Trump and the Republican Party almost certainly knew and continue to know to this day result in unnecessary deaths, suffering, and trauma. On August 30th, 2022, after a year of struggling with the realization that I had supported candidates and a party and a movement that I did not believe any longer reflected who I was, even though I, like most MAGA Americans right now, support Trump for what they think are the right reasons. So as someone who left on August 30th, 2022, after a year of struggling with this, some of the reasons that I left, because everyone usually asks, and I'd like to answer so all of you know, because I feel like it's important to what we're doing here. The catalyst for my leaving MAGA was actually not Donald Trump, it was Ron DeSantis. Now, I was someone who volunteered for Trump's campaign. There are many who did a lot more work, volunteer work than I did, but I did a lot of the grassroots work, phone banking, phone calls, helping people get registered. I actually helped write part of the call script for the Trump campaign, and the one line that I added into the call script was, "Let's make history and elect Donald Trump as president." So my reasons, before I get to the moment why I left, okay? So before Trump's candidacy, I was neither a Republican nor a Democrat. I thought that both parties were the same. I felt that they really didn't represent all Americans. And even though Trump ran as a Republican, I saw him as someone who was an actual outsider. A lot of what he did say at the time, especially about economic issues, I found myself nodding in agreement. So while I was not someone who was a supporter the moment he came down the escalator, I did over time start to think that he was the right person for the job. That as someone who was an outsider, I believed that we needed to obliterate the established political order, and that he seemed willing and able to do that. So that's why I gravitated to MAGA. The disillusionment with our politics was my entree into MAGA. And I wanted someone who was a disruptor. Now, we got a disruptor. Unfortunately, looking back, it was a disruptor who was antithetical and anathema to democracy and our rule of law. But and I don't say this as a self-defense from my own ignorance or anyone else's, but I supported Trump like millions of others because I thought that he wanted the job for the right reasons. And then, of course, I came to realize very painfully after a year of what I call my heaven and hell, that he and Ron DeSantis and MAGA and the Republican Party made acceptable avoidable deaths and suffering. When we look at COVID, when we look at the vaccine, when we look at firearms, when we look at January 6th, which I thought was I didn't think it was a good day, but I used to think that it was hyperbolized and it was made into something that it really wasn't. Once I started to move out of the right-wing echo chamber and the media there, some of which I wrote for, like The Federalist and Bylines and Fox and American Thinker, I started to slowly move out of that media sphere, diversified my news and information sources, and I realized that actually in January 6th, these groups that I thought were innocuous without influence, like the Proud Boys, they actually did have influence, and perhaps worst of all, they had the blessing of the most powerful person in the world. And then over the next many, many months, I really struggled in this internecine personal political struggle that I had of, could I support this anymore? But then I would look at a photo of an event at Mar-a-Lago, or I would look at a Trump speech I gave, or I would read an article that I wrote, and I would think, no, this is just a roadblock. I'm on the right side. Everyone else is on the wrong side. We're the real Americans. Everyone else is the fake Americans. And then over time, in the next several months, early 2022 in February, The Republican Party deemed the insurrection legitimate political discourse. That's what they called it. And then 3 months after that was the Uvalde school shooting. And it was after Uvalde when privately and quietly I left MAGA. And I said I could not support this anymore. I told a few people privately, people whom I had gotten to know close in MAGA. Thank you.
Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for saying that. Even though I left privately, however, something was nagging at me that I needed to do more. So on August 30th, 2022, I published a mea culpa. And in that mea culpa, I acknowledged my mistakes of supporting Trump, MAGA, and DeSantis. I said I was sorry. When I wrote that mea culpa, I actually did not think anybody would care. And I just celebrated what I call my Leaving MAGA-versary, so it was a little over 2 years. And I've gotten to know others who left MAGA, and we're going to celebrate their Leaving MAGA-versaries as we approach their dates. But I realized instantaneously that actually many did care. I would receive messages such as, "Rich, can you talk to my mother? Rich, can you talk to my father? I haven't spoken to my best friend in over 40 years." And I was admittedly mostly naive and oblivious to this, even though I had helped cause exactly what people were telling me, because I was fighting this imaginary tyranny that anyone who was not with MAGA, doesn't matter if you were a lifelong Republican, if you were not 100% with us, you were 0% with us. And I went through that phase over a course of a year leaving, and then if we fast forward to right now, first it was Joe and then the Harris campaign asked me if I would be willing to take this co-chair Republicans for Harris role. And I accepted without hesitation. Because I think it's important that we not just have an anti-Trump message. There needs to be a pro-Kamala and Tim message as well. And I think one of the reasons a lot of voters do feel disenchanted is for understandable reasons, they look at a lot of elected officials, much more on the Republican Party side, but they look at elected officials and say, I wish they'd work more together. Well, the Harris-Walz campaign is the only campaign I am aware of in if not modern history, all of history, that has actually invited into the campaign people who are not of the party. And I think that every election is historic. This one in particular has implications that I think are unprecedented, because a second Trump presidency will irreversibly damage our democracy. But the reason that is not going to happen, and the reason that I believe that the Republican Party is going to be historically repudiated next month, is because in our history, whenever we've seen progress and we've seen gains, always present have been unlikely but necessary alliances. And what the Democratic Party is doing and what the Harris-Walz ticket are doing, and all up and down the ballot, it's not just about voting for president, it's from down to your school board, where a lot of the Ron DeSantis school board candidates in Florida, they've been renounced, they've been rejected at the ballot box. It's important that we don't just focus on the top of the ticket, although it's crucial, yes, to vote in every election. But when we think about our history, right now is our moment to advance our democracy by forming and forging these unlikely but necessary alliances. And I think that what's about to happen in November is actually going to shock many people in the world. In a good way. Let me qualify it, in a good way. And I think the GOP actually knows that. And so I don't want to mercy kill the Republican Party because I want a one-party system. No. As a matter of fact, when I go to Democratic events, what all the attendees say to me is they say, we need a better two-party system.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, I can promise you that in Republican events, that's not what they're talking about. And I know that because I went to them for many, many years. And when I was in our MAGA political events, yes, publicly we used to talk about there's more of us than there are of you. Are there any kids here?
Yeah.
All right, cover your ears. It's a bunch of you know what. Okay, we used to say public, I won't say it. I don't know if everyone's ears are covered. I won't say that. But I will say that with publicly we would say there's more of us, but privately we were actually very afraid of high voter turnout. And the Republican Party is afraid of high voter turnout because they know the lower the turnout, the better the chances of them winning. So I think that when all is said and done, the Harris-Walz ticket is going to get 100 million votes. I think that when all is said, and when all is said and done, we are, yes, it's true that MAGA is going to remain past November, and the reason it will is because all of you, I'm willing to bet that virtually all of you have friends and family who are probably still in the thrall of MAGA. That's why MAGA, and I believe that most of those individuals deep down are good people. And I think it would behoove our country to keep in mind that good people, intelligent people can be influenced. You know, I allowed myself to be inculcated into these mythologies of liberalism as an existential threat. And those of you who know, who are still in MAGA, they feel that way. And it's not because they lack intelligence or good character. It's because everything about the Republican and MAGA ethos in that community is about lying to people. And I saw it because I realized that I was duped into believing a lot of those lies. So yes, MAGA will remain past November. With our organization, we're going to try to lead a national reconciliation between friends and family of those who are in MAGA. But it is our time right now to finally put Donald Trump in America's rearview mirror. And when we do that, when we do that, now we can get back to the business of respectful, civil, impassioned, democratic, lowercase d, discussions about how to keep moving our country forward, how to make sure that most people have opportunity, our kids have good schools, good education, our safety and security. But right now, this is not about policy. This is not about ideology. This is something much bigger. This is an existential moment in our history. And I have no doubt that all of you are going to do a little bit to see to it that we get over the finish line, and we will. And I just want to thank Phyllis in particular, because she and all of the organizers, because Phyllis reached out to me. I had a DNC video testimonial that aired on night one, and I went into my Facebook inbox, and there was Phyllis saying, "I need to talk to you." And if Phyllis says, I didn't even know who she was. She said, "I need to talk to you." I said, "I gotta call this lady, because she's gonna not take no for an answer." Yeah, and then on a video call several hours later, when she said, "Oh, Kamala Palooza," I said, "Oh, I used to go to the Lollapaloozas in New York when I lived there." So I said, "I'm gonna be here." So thank you so much, everyone, for having me. And also, thank you for welcoming me, given my past decisions and rhetoric. And thank you in advance for what your willingness will be to re-engage and rejuvenate some of those relationships that you had with your friends and family before 2016. They might be dormant, but they're not dead, I promise you. And we're going to be able to rebuild a lot of those and restore a lot of those relationships. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate having me.